September 11th, 2001, the morning air was crisp, the kind of early fall day that made the city come alive. The sky above Manhattan was a clear, flawless blue, with not a single cloud in sight. Claire Evans, like thousands of others, was starting her day in the heart of the city. She adjusted her glasses as she stepped out of the subway, balancing her coffee and purse in one hand while checking her watch. It was 8:30 a.m., and she was running late. Her office was on the 52nd floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Claire had worked as a financial analyst there for 2 years, and though her job could be stressful, she loved the view. On clear days like this, you could see for miles, across the Hudson, past the Statue of Liberty, even to the distant outline of New Jersey. It felt like you were on top of the world. She entered the lobby, greeted by the familiar hum of the building, the quiet chatter of people on their way to work, and the hum of elevators rising and falling. Claire rushed past the security desks, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her mind already focused on the meeting she had in less than an hour. As she rode the elevator up, packed in with others who were starting their day, she exchanged pleasantries with a few colleagues. They joked about the workload and the always-on-the-run lifestyle of working in finance. No one had any reason to suspect what was coming. 8:46 a.m. Claire had just sat down at her desk, setting her coffee aside and flipping open her laptop. Her office was busy, the sound of phones ringing and papers shuffling all around her. She took a deep breath, ready to dive into her work, when something, a deep, resonant rumble, shook the entire building. It felt like an earthquake. The floor trembled, and the windows shuddered violently. Everyone in the office froze for a moment, glancing around in confusion. The lights flickered. Claire looked toward the window, but the view that had once been her favorite now filled her with dread. Thick, black smoke was rising from the building next door, the North Tower. "What the hell was that?" someone shouted. Claire's heart raced as she stood and joined the rush of people heading to the windows. No one could comprehend what had happened. Some thought it was a bomb, others a freak accident. A plane had crashed into the North Tower, but it didn't make sense. How could a plane hit the building on such a clear day? A sense of panic began to creep into the room, but it was still laced with confusion. People grabbed their phones, trying to reach family, trying to get news, but the lines were jammed. Claire's fingers trembled as she tried to call her fiancé, Mark, who worked across town. No signal. She turned to her coworker, Ben, who was just as pale as she was. "Should we leave?" she asked, her voice shaky. Ben nodded. "Yeah. Let's get out of here. Now." 9:03 a.m. Claire was still in the office, her mind torn between following her instincts to evacuate and the uncertainty of the situation. She grabbed her purse and jacket when suddenly, the world shattered around her. A deafening roar filled the air, followed by a massive explosion. The entire building shook violently. People screamed. Claire was thrown to the floor as the South Tower was hit. Glass shattered, furniture toppled, and the once organized office descended into chaos. She struggled to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest, and all around her was smoke and debris. The smell of jet fuel and fire filled the air, choking her as she gasped for breath. Panic took over the room as people rushed toward the exits, some screaming, some too stunned to move. "We need to go," Ben grabbed her arm, his voice desperate. "Now, Claire." Together, they joined the throng of people moving toward the stairwell, pushing through the confusion and fear. The stairwell was packed, but orderly in the beginning. People were crying, some were praying. Every step felt like a lifetime as they descended, floor after floor, unsure of what was waiting for them outside. The stairwell was dark, filled with smoke, and growing hotter as they descended. Claire held on to Ben's hand tightly, afraid she would lose him in the crowd. It felt like an eternity as they made their way down, passing firefighters who were going up, determined to save as many lives as possible. "We're going to be okay," Ben said, though his voice shook. "We're almost there." Claire nodded, though tears blurred her vision. All she could think about was Mark. Was he okay? Did he know what was happening? Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the ground floor. Emergency personnel were shouting at everyone to keep moving, to get out of the building as quickly as possible. The once beautiful plaza outside the towers was now a war zone. Debris and ash covered everything. People ran in every direction, some covered in blood, others in dust, all of them united by the sheer terror of what was happening. Claire and Ben stumbled out onto the street, gasping for fresh air. But the scene around them was one of utter devastation. They looked up, and Claire felt her stomach drop. Both towers were burning. 9:59 a.m. Claire had barely managed to move a few blocks away when a new sound, louder than anything before, filled the air. The ground trembled. She turned just in time to see the south tower collapse, crumbling into a cloud of dust and debris. The sheer force of it knocked people off their feet, and the cloud engulfed everything in its path. Claire and Ben ran, their legs weak, their lungs burning, trying to stay ahead of the wave of destruction. She couldn't hear anything but the roar of the collapse, couldn't see anything but the thick, choking dust that turned day into night. She fell to her knees, coughing, gasping for air as the world around her disappeared in the haze. The city was unrecognizable. Ash and dust covered everything, turning the once vibrant streets into a desolate wasteland. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance. Claire's clothes were torn, her skin covered in dust, her eyes red from tears and smoke. She and Ben had finally stopped running when they reached a safe distance. She sat on a curb, staring blankly at the destruction. The Twin Towers, the proud symbols of New York City's skyline, were gone. Thousands of lives, just like hers, had been shattered in a matter of hours. Ben sat beside her, his face streaked with ash and tears. Neither of them spoke. What could they say? The enormity of what had happened was too much to comprehend. In her pocket, Claire's phone buzzed. She fumbled to pull it out, her hands shaking. It was Mark. The text was simple, but it was enough. "I'm safe. Where are you?" She broke down, sobbing, her body shaking with a mixture of relief and grief. The world had changed. And nothing would ever be the same again.